Welcome to the Bo Benson Show. If you like conspiracy theories, you like what's going on in the government, you like to learn about secret societies, you like to learn about Jehovah's Witnesses, this is the perfect channel for you. Please subscribe and make a comment. Welcome to the Bo Benson Show. Alright, let's get started. So, as you can see, Jehovah's Masonic Bible. So, I have a thing referred to, an episode referred to as Jehovah's Masonic. And what it is, it just talks about the Masonic background and the Masonic beliefs and the Masonic practices of the organization. Now, one of the things I want you guys to do is you go back, watch that video if you haven't had a chance to see it. But I want to talk about one of the weird comments that I got. And I wanted to explain why we get comments like this. So here we go. This is why I despair when XJWs touch on this issue. Due to your ignorance, Bo, you are discarding divine truth and convincing others to do the same. No, I'm just kidding. I'd stop that if I were you. We should be asking the question, what is the all-seeing eye? Crown or cross and crown, and what does it represent? The Bible itself tells us to keep your eyes single, does it not? Why? So as funny as this comment is, like, okay, here you got a person who's telling me that I'm ignorant because I'm pointing out a fact. Well, everything that I stated, I showed you where to go, where it's at. So nothing that I presented to anyone was unfactual. And he's saying, this is why I despair when ex-Jehovah's Witnesses... okay, so wait a minute. Let's break down what this person's saying. So this is why I despair when ex-Jehovah's Witnesses touch on this issue. So me pointing out the fact that they claim that they are not of Masonic origins, but they really are, is somehow my fault. So somehow me pointing out a lie is unchristian, is what this person is trying to say. Which is kind of funny because I thought it's thou shalt not lie. But apparently the real scripture says thou shalt not lie about the organization. Now, the second point to all this, we start talking about what does the all-seeing eye, what does the cross and crown mean in the Bible. Well, I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I don't really care. See, this is the other thing that this guy's pointing out, which is interesting, is he's already determined that I care what the Bible says, right? So he's already putting it that I am pulling people away from the Bible because I'm trying to take away from the one true source or something. But he doesn't even know, I know he doesn't know my channel, he doesn't know me because I've told everyone this and I've said it 100,000 times. And obviously I got to say it 100,000 more times. I am not religious. I am an atheist. I am pointing out religious dogmatic belief systems that the organization has because they're dogmatic belief systems. All I'm doing is saying, based on these religious texts, the religious texts are typically seen in A. You are choosing to look at them in B. B does not follow text A because B says this, and that. But B is obviously getting its information or its divined information from a different source. All I'm doing is telling you that this religious organization A, Christianity, that B, Watchtower, is saying things that are contradictory to one another. And so let's just imagine for a second that he told us what the cross and crown means and what the single eye represents. How would that change anything? How would that change my argument at all? All you're doing is stating some information coming from the Bible. All I did was take actual, real data and then give it to the audience and say, this is where they got it, this is what it is, this is the origins of this belief system that I don't have, that I took the time to learn. So if you go and research that term, it basically means to stay on the path. That's all it represents. That's all it's saying. Don't have divisions. Well, obviously there's a division because Christianity as a whole believes in A and you believe in B and you're a little tiny minority group. So you're the division. This is the ignorance that you get from people like this that quote things but then don't know what they're quoting to you but then act like they do. You may, like all ex-Jehovah's, need to grow the fuck up and really think because you are crushing divine truth. How can this be divine truth? You just stated the Bible says to stay in the path. You're not on the path. You're on your own separate path. And you admit to being on your own separate path. That you're different from the world. You even exile yourself from the path. This is how ignorant these people are. This is how stupid and lame they are. And then telling me I need to F up. And really think because you are crushing divine truth into the mirror by saying that you are saying and also leading others off the cliff by stopping them from looking deeper into things. My gosh, how simple-minded can you get? I'm giving you the information. I'm doing literally what you're saying that I'm not doing is what I'm doing. I'm giving them information they don't know, they don't have, they've never seen before, and then showing them where it is. I'm literally step by step helping them see, helping them know what they don't know. This makes no sense, but this is the problem. Let's think about it for a second. Let's let all just this one silly video that I make all the different things you would need to know and research in order to understand what you're doing. The all-seeing eye. The lion symbol is Satan in the Bible. The Illuminati changes in the Bible. So you need to know what the Illuminati is. You'd have to know what the New World Society is. You'd have to know what the New World Order is. You'd have to understand the theory of the anti-hero. You would need to know the organization of new systems and Masonic beliefs. So you have to know Jehovah's Witnesses' new system belief, and then you have to know the new system belief that the Masonic groups have, or Masonic groups. You would have to understand the coming new order, which is a political agenda. You'd have to understand shining and illuminators in the world, what those terminologies mean biblically. Hidden symbols, right? You'd have to figure out what all those symbols are in the faith action, right? And then JW Films Part 1 and 2, you'd have to research them. You have to research pyramidology, and then obviously Masonic compass. You have to know what that is. Then you'd have to go and research the theater that is in Norway and the landscape and what the all-seeing eye represents. Then you have to learn about Jared Kushner. And then you would have to understand what JW's statements are, and you'd have to know what Jehovah's Witness belief systems are and how they interact with his statements publicly. You'd have to understand what the oath of the brother means, which would be a Masonic term which Jehovah's Witnesses use. Then you'd have to know the Harbor. Then you have to research Harbor Private Ideas. Then you'd have to know the World Economic Forum and how it interacts. And then you have to know what JW's founding governing body member is. Then you have to research him. Then you have to research the gravestone site and the location. Then you have to learn about Kingdom Halls. Then you have to learn about Masonic lozenge and why they don't have windows and why both claim and what they represent and why they don't have windows and what's the purpose. And then JW Masonry images. You have to go research over 1,000 pages of Jehovah's Witness literature to see everything that I'm showing you guys. So this retarded fuck that is coming on my channel and telling me that I'm ignorant, this in one single fucking stupid video that I made for people, I had to research every fucking one of these things in order to produce one 35-minute video. And this person is going to tell me that I'm ignorant and that I need to do my research. It's really funny when you have people who are complete and utter fucktards tell me that I'm ignorant and they don't know anything of what's on this screen. Or they do. So another prime example of this is I have a family member who is a completely and utterly hates President Trump and thinks that President Biden is like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he starts telling me how Donald Trump is doing this and he's getting arrested. And he knows only what mainstream media tells him. He knows nothing about the facts. He's never watched the trial. He doesn't know who's involved in it. And so I called him out on it, and I gave him examples of, for example, I said, you know, your media station said that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. Hillary Clinton Hillary Clinton produced that with the head of the FBI with Barack Obama's permission. So we know for a fact that those things are true. Those were brought into court. And so we go on for a few minutes, give them all these other examples, and they just have a blank stare in their face, and then they tell me, well, he's going to jail because of the criminal activity that was on the news. And then I just was like, everything that I just said to you and presented to you, you completely ignored so you can make some ridiculous statement. And so I told him, I said, okay, well, think about this. I said, what about Hunter Biden's laptop? I mean, you've had to have heard about that, right? And he was like, well, I said, well, don't you think it's, a coincidence that the second that the president, talks about that, then all of a sudden he's getting all these charges against him coming from the, the DA office of this individual who's currently in office. And it just happens that that's his political rival. That doesn't seem suspicious to you? And I said, well, what about all these charges? Why were these charges not brought to him while he was in office? Why are they waiting till he goes to rerun? Then all of a sudden, all this stuff's coming out. It doesn't make any sense. It's that kind of cognitive dissonance that you see with people that makes it hard to understand what they know and what they don't know. Because one of the, let's say, behavioral patterns of people who are in the organization is they think that they know everything and that they're smarter than everybody else because, well, obviously they were the only ones that realized the truth of the truth. So this is the cognitive bias that you have to deal with, which is hard to know. Are you dealing with someone who's just dishonest and wants to lie to your face, or you're dealing with someone who's just honestly ignorant? And it's really, really hard to know which one you're dealing with.
Any other thoughts that the president has?
On March 17th, Hunter accidentally admits that it was his laptop from. On March 17th, Hunter accidentally admits that it was his laptop from hell. The next day, DA Alvin Bragg indicts President Trump. June 8th, an FBI document is released showing that the Ukrainians paid the Biden crime family millions and millions of dollars. The next day, the Mar-a-Lago raid and the Mar-a-Lago indictment. Last week, Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea deal fell through when the judge realized it had blanket immunity. The following day, a superseding indictment against Donald Trump. July 31st, Devin Archer goes to testify in front of the House. That was only after they failed to put him in jail prior to the fact. What happens the next day? The January 6th indictment that we're here for today. This is not a coincidence. This is election interference at its finest.
Problems, not addressing problems.
Where do you think Trump fell on that spectrum?
So Trump was much more of the type, let's solve the problem.
That's my sense. Yeah.
And so in discussing the drug issue with him, he said something that I give him a lot of credit for, and it's one of his good qualities. And that, I said, look, it's gotten to the point and the size that this cannot be solved with going down and arresting people and putting them on trial one by one, bringing them into the United States and trying them. This is more of a national security threat. These are terrorist groups. And he said, well, let's deal with it. That's why we're here. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? Let's, stop kicking the can down the road. And that was his attitude. And I give him credit for that. And I think we would have, but for COVID, I think we would have collected a lot of intelligence. And in a second term, we would have taken more definitive action.
So you think that actually Trump and broadly you guys in the administration really were on track to potentially follow through and use military force maybe after a year of intelligence groundwork laying?
Right. Yes. I think that would have happened.
And why not? I mean, it just wasn't a priority between 2016 and 2018.
Right. I mean, there are other things to do. But then,
Yeah, of course.
And then
I'm not criticizing it. I'm just understanding.
when COVID came along, it disrupted
But
everything.
also the problem has worsened, right? The fentanyl crisis has gotten to be
definitely,
much more
yeah.
of a national challenge today than it was even in 2015 or 16.
Right, but that clearly was coming. We understood that
We
was
understood
coming.
it was
down
coming,
the
but
pipe.
it didn't make the priority list. Once it made the priority list, you're saying the administration did actually take certain steps, and but for COVID and but for the change in administration, you think it's actually quite likely it would have happened.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Now, I mean, that was one of Trump's strengths. He had other issues relating to his ability to actually carry out things in a coherent way.
So I know not everyone in here cares about politics, but why am I showing you this? Well, because politics are everywhere. Politics is what runs our country. Politics is what runs our society. Politics is what runs the organization. So, for an example, all these things you would have to know, research, and understand to even understand what the argument against Donald Trump is. Most people don't want to do that. They don't want to spend hours researching this stuff. They don't really care. Their lives are busy. That's the same kind of problem and dynamic you have with the organization. People don't want to sit for hours upon hours researching this. Yes, people like myself want to do that. And yes, there are lots of people that are. But for the mass majority of members of Jehovah's Witnesses, they just want to have the feeling of how good it feels to feel important and wanted. That is the addiction that they have. It's the idea, it's the ego that they can't let go. Because think about how hard it is to find out that you're completely and utterly wrong. I mean, I've done it in my life, and it's not super fun and it's not super great. Remember, I used to be a little person that believed in Jehovah's principles. I grew up and realized they were a bunch of crap. I also was someone who was deceived in believing that the Democrat Party were not what they are. Remember, I used to be a Democrat. You guys seem to forget that. I know people are like, oh, you're a Trump supporter, you're a right-wing you're a right-wing conspiratist. Sorry. Now, all those statements, you can say what you want, but here's the thing. As I learned things and I learned how things were really operating, my perspective changed. When you educate yourself and you know more, your opinions about things can change, or they could stay the same, or they could slightly change. There's all kinds of revenue you can go into to figure out what you're going to do next. My point is, you should never trust anyone who's telling you that you don't need to research the information and that you researching the information is bad for you. Anyone who is telling you that knowledge is bad for you wants to deceive you. Period. And don't let them.
Or someone is found guilty by man, as Jesus was. It doesn't mean that he's guilty in the sight of God. Or someone is found guilty by man, as Jesus was. It doesn't mean that he's guilty in the sight of God. Or someone is found guilty by man, as Jesus was. It doesn't mean that he's guilty in the sight of God. Or someone is found
Remember, everything I tell you is just my opinion, and it's just an opinion until you research the facts. And then what was an opinion very well may become the truth.